Aloha. Welcome to American Issues Take One. I'm Tim Apicella, your host, and today's title is The Influence of Weed in Our Politics and Life. In 2020, October 2020, President Biden basically granted amnesty for all convictions related to possession of marijuana. Not only did he do that as the President of the United States affecting federal charges, he encouraged all 50 states to follow the same request and amnesty. Then last week in 2023, this last week, the feds are now looking at ignoring previous drug usage as far as their background checks in order to fill vacancies in many federal agencies. And that also includes the military, I think, exception of the Marines. So marijuana is coming into our lives. It's influencing our society. And with us today is my co-host, Jay Fidell, and our special esteemed guest, Chuck Crumpton. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Tim.
We're here to talk about marijuana, weed, dope, whatever you want to call it. That's what we're here to talk about, and its influence on our society. Jay, to you, 38 states have approved marijuana for medical use, and 22 states have approved marijuana for recreational use. And I believe it's 9 states and territories that have decriminalized completely possession of marijuana. Now, selling it's a different story, but possession of marijuana, everyone's moving in the direction to decriminalize it. And that alludes to what I said at the introduction, where President Biden granted amnesty for all convictions that pertain to possession of marijuana. What's your read on this? It's been slow in coming. Hawaii just booted out the initiative or the bill to legalize marijuana in this state yet again. What's your read on all this?
It's chaos.
Chaos, you say?
Yeah, what do you do in a state where it's legal when you go to a state that it's not legal? What do you do when you get involved with the feds in crossing the state line or doing something federal? It's chaos. You get the state saying one thing, and next state saying another thing. Everything is different. I don't like chaos. Do you like chaos? And I certainly am not sure about what Joe Biden is doing. I mean, this falls in the category of we don't have an emergency anymore with COVID. It went away. So why?
So do you disagree with his amnesty of 2020, 2022?
I'll get to that.
Okay.
So why do that? And I love the part about the federal employees and the military for past use, I guess, crimes and conviction of use of marijuana. What happens? And I whisper this: what happens in the future? What happens tomorrow? Is it also going to be presumptively expunged from the record tomorrow? Anyway, chaos. And I wish we'd come to terms on it. There are so many issues in this country, so many problems in so many institutions. Our rights are being, this is like Soma. Remember Soma, you guys? Soma was the drug in Brave New World, I think it was. It was a hypothetical drug. It was a fictional drug. And you give the people Soma and they feel better. And if I'm a politician, I have to consider that. Why not give the people drugs and feel better, or have them feel better? Okay, that's one element. The other element I'd like to just mention, and we were talking about before the show, is that this is kind of like a product of the 60s. It's a product of Vietnam. It's a product of those guys, who went to Vietnam, and they needed relief from the tension, the stress, and the lethal risk of being there. So hey, how about some pills? How about some marijuana? And a culture developed, and then the music developed around the culture. And you could hardly turn the movies on today without having some kind of call it a light drug like marijuana in use. So the media has been essentially selling us what was made popular in Vietnam years ago, and so now it's pervasive all around the country. And I think it's good political move to say, okay, we're going to legalize that. Okay, you can feel better in a complex and stressful world. We're going to give you a break. But I'm not sure that you line up all the doctors and you get a specific result. And I'm not sure you get if you line up all the doctors on alcohol, you get a specific result either. I mean, there's a dark side to all of this. And the dark side is we live in a world that's complex and stressful. And I guess we need relief, just like alcohol is a relief and sometimes very dangerous. So is marijuana a relief and sometimes actually dangerous, if not to the person using it, then to the automobile in the next lane. It's troublesome that we live at a time when this is becoming de rigueur. It won't be long, I think, that it won't be, what did you say, 38 states? It'll be 50 states because everybody wants it. But will it be regulated properly? Will it be taxed properly? Will the crime that has been associated with marijuana, dissolve or not? I don't think we have a handle on the war against drugs, and I don't think we have a handle on the war, it's the wrong word, but the war against marijuana that began a long time ago. I wish we'd settled down on it so we could spend more time on the debt ceiling.
Okay. Thank you, Jay. We'll get to that on the next show. Chuck, are you a proponent that the acceptance of marijuana in society and then the law of our society is, as Jay describes, chaos? Or
yeah,
do you
first, have him tell you whether he's ever had a toke. Ask him.
No, I will not. This is not a Catholic confessional. You can ignore his comment, Chuck, and ask my question. Answer my question. Do you agree with Jay that this is an entree for chaos in our society?
There's always going to be both an underlying chaos and a superficial layer of chaos. The question is what's in between. And one of the things that's in between, there's a bright side to your statistics. We know that in at least 22 states, doctors and patients can now toke together for the first time. Think about that. That could be beneficial. There could be a human connection there that may reduce.
Well, there goes the 5-minute doctor visit.
You're right. But it could reduce medical malpractice claims, litigation, and impact, which is a huge health risk. The CDC has well publicized that. Could reduce it a lot. Who's going to bother, right? But the other thing is, and Jay is right, that it's taken us 100 years to come from reefer madness to reefer marketing. Okay, we know who's behind that. We know who was behind both of the dominant forces at those times. And the concern is whether the dominant force for marijuana marketing, distribution, sales, production, the industry is one that is going to manage it more responsibly than it has all the other products it's had for the last 100 years, whether they be motor vehicles or airplanes or vaping or whatever they are.
I think it's odd that, well, not odd, I think it's ironic that, for example, the former police chief of Seattle recommended decriminalization, but then got into pot business himself. Look at former Speaker John Boehner, Speaker of the House. He's heavily involved in the pot business, and I understand he's doing quite well in it. But, it's just these ironic things that, people who are charged with enforcing the law and preventing pot usage are now advocates of it. Let's look at the difference between recreational use versus medical use. Chuck, do you draw a distinction? Do you think that it's just a scam, that medical pot usage is really just recreational? You could get one of these medical ID cards here in this state relatively easily. What's your opinion on that dividing line?
I think the much more important distinction, Tim, is not between medical versus recreational use, but between marijuana and fentanyl and the seriously dangerous opioids that have been disseminated. And that's why it brings me back to the question, is the industry that generates this, whether it's a legitimate, legally sanctioned industry or not, is it going to manage the distribution, use, and consequences in a responsible manner?
Let me go to that point. In 2012, there was 41,500 deaths due to opioids. 2015, 52,400. 2019, 70,600. 2021, 106,700 deaths as a direct result of opioid overdoses. I don't know one person who died of a marijuana overdose, to my knowledge.
And you got to think the real figures, Tim, are much, much higher than that, because that's only the deaths in which a tox screen was run timely and effectively, and that was detected at a sufficient level to list it as a cause of death. That's a screening process that eliminates a far greater number of deaths, whether they be homeless or whether they be other people whose deaths are not investigated. Nobody's going to run a tox screen 100% of the time on every casualty.
Since the days of that movie Reefer Madness, the federal government and state governments have been very busy of locking up people with marijuana possession. And you have to look at the downriver consequences of that. We have people going to jail, and they weren't hardened criminals when they went to jail, but when they came out, they were pretty good at being a criminal. Jay, what about those issues? What about the fact that literally hundreds of thousands of Americans have been arrested and imprisoned due to marijuana use? And let's associate the cost of imprisoning an individual in this country. Aren't there some benefits of legalization of marijuana? If not, certainly fiscal benefits.
On our shows from the time of Trump Week till now, we have talked about the relationship of the citizen and the government. Okay, and there are hundreds of millions of kids. At one point in their lives, they were kids, who have come forward from the Vietnam time, from being in the army, in the military, in the Vietnam time, and grew up under this kind of dark cloud of the possibility that they would be arrested and tried and convicted and sent to the brig or to jail for using marijuana. And this, and at the same time, the culture and the view of these kids, now adult, was that it wasn't really, injurious, that it was okay. It didn't impair them in any significant way. It was nothing like heroin or the hard drugs that we have had and will continue to have. It was always kind of recreational for them, and it was fun, and it allowed them to establish relationships and all that. But the government was always breathing down their neck. And so I answer your question by saying the real damage here has been the relationship of the citizen with the government, and that has happened through our lives around pot. Whether you say it's perfectly good or not good, whether you believe this group of doctors or that group of doctors, whether you believe the Republicans or the Democrats on the issue, the point is that it alienated the country. That's my answer to your question.
Well, and the other thing that we need to be very, very well aware of, Tim, is that the reasons, the motivation, the bias behind the war on crime sweeping marijuana in with them were largely racial and class bias.
Good point.
I saw that
Good
in
point.
the write-up, I stopped there, and I was gonna ask you, Tim, or you, Chuck, what is that? Why is it racial? I want to know why prosecution of marijuana is racial. Can you help me?
I can answer that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I remember getting hauled off to the principal's office when I cited the Pledge of Allegiance, and I ended with liberty and justice for some. And that is, a lot of the race class doesn't have the financial means to hire an effective attorney to defend them in a court of law when it comes to a marijuana charge or a drug charge.
That's it.
That's it. It costs a lot of money to hire an attorney to get the proper defense one needs to.
But inherent in your answer, and I'm troubled by that too. Inherent in your answer is that if you have the money, you get off. You get off
with liberty and justice for some. Absolutely.
If you don't have the money, you get convicted and imprisoned or whatever it is. And so it's simply a function of money, and money is a function of race or class. That's a far distance to go, I think.
I think there's a causal connection. Absolutely, there's a causal connection.
Go ahead, Charles.
Okay.
Yeah, he's Charles.
There's essentially an indefinitely long list of factors that connect racial discrimination and class discrimination, not only with each other, but with the war on crime and other manipulations of our legal system that were designed to disfavor certain groups of excluded and disempowered people, which included racial categories, included class categories. Of those legal representations, only a small part, the geographical location. If you want to catch in your net more young blacks than whites, it's easier to do with marijuana. If you want to drop a bag of a substance in a car as a pretext for arrest, it's really easy to do with marijuana. It's cheap, it's readily available. Cops carry it with them all the time back in the 60s and 70s, largely for that purpose. So I have to disagree with you on this one, Jay. I strongly believe that the war on crime itself and the sweep of marijuana into that were more largely racially and class motivated than for any other single factor by the people who felt it served their best interest to do that and who wanted to incarcerate those classes and groups of people.
Okay, well, all right. Okay. I take part of your argument. The other thing, Tim, is that marijuana, as any drug, when you make it illegal, you create a criminal imprimatur around it, a community of crime, because you have to distribute it against the law. People, get involved in, in dealing and all that. And those guys, get prosecuted and investigated, whatever their race may be, because, that's a violation of the law. That's more serious as far as the police are concerned. So if you decriminalize marijuana, that's the end of that. Finished. You can buy it on the street corner. You can buy it from, whoever the retail is. And so I think that there's a lot of good reasons to decriminalize, to make recreational marijuana decriminalized, because it will completely dissolve the criminal concept, the criminal community around it.
Well, by de facto, then, have you legalized it?
Well, I mean de facto in some states.
Well, I mean, if you're not going to prosecute for possession of marijuana, haven't you basically gave a wink and a nod to the legalization of it?
Well, I mean, what you're saying is let's do a wink and a nod, and I don't think this country ought to engage in winks and nods. I know it does, and you guys will be the first ones to tell me that it engages in winks and nods, but I don't think it should. I think if it's against the law, it's against the law. If it's not against the law, it's not against the law.
Okay,
it's very simple. We have a rule of law thing here, and we have not been abiding by it. And when I tell you that I believe it's chaos from state to state, from region in the country, you talk about race and class, there's more problems along these lines in the South, for example, than in the North. And if you made a map of the country looking for recreational and medicinal marijuana, you find it's not in the South. There's very few good things are in the South, frankly. But what I think what happens is the chaos creates the chaos creates something which is inconsistent with our democracy. with the rule of law where people have to do winks and blinks. We should avoid that.
Okay, well, let's talk about the fact here in our state, Hawaii, that the proposed bill to legalize marijuana was basically shown the door again this year. And then the idea that, okay, if we can't get in through the front door and the back door is locked, let's go in through the window. So the suggestion was made by one editorial that I read this week was, why not just relax the standards of the medical marijuana use card, which is to say, give it a wink and a nod for insomnia.
Well, that's exactly your question a moment ago, and it's exactly my point. You can take that to absurdity.
It's still legal. I mean, they legally obtained a medical marijuana card.
Yeah, okay, but I think
would that make you feel better?
No, that's not an honest approach. We need to have a rule of law that's meaningful, and that people aren't doing winks and blinks and carving the edges that way. Sure, you could put every bloody thing in the world. Oh my God, I got a hangnail. I have a hangnail. It goes on the schedule.
I think it warrants a medical card.
Good luck with getting the rule of law from this Supreme Court. And
that's right.
Wow, it's a larger issue, isn't it?
Yeah. So, Chuck, let me go to you. A lot of states in our nation have budget deficits, and the more innovative ones, I think Colorado was the first out of the gate, saw the wisdom of taxation of marijuana distribution, and have reaped quite great benefits to their state coffers. What do you think about marijuana as a staple of revenue for a particular state?
I think the underlying question of how you responsibly manage that industry, of which taxation is one essential component. I mean, you don't hear screaming about it. You don't hear Trump or DeSantis or Cruz or Rubio or any of those guys, McConnell, McCarthy, and I can't imagine why we let another McCarthy get a leadership position in Congress. We didn't learn anything.
You got a long memory, man.
Yeah, he does. Didn't forget a thing.
These guys are not saying word one about marijuana. They talk all the time about crime, but there's no connection between the two. So taxation to me is just one aspect of responsible management. What I'm much more concerned about is how do you manage the industry so that the THC concentrations in the marijuana that's available on the market are within reasonably safe limits.
Right. Well, I think Hawaii has done that because, medical marijuana growers are doing quite well, I think. And that issue has been addressed, is the quality control of THC output. If you want to say output.
Well, the benefit there is that if you have recreational marijuana, you have licensing as well as taxation, and you can control it. And if there's some, grower or user or seller or reseller, whatever it is selling beyond the THC limit, you take his license away. Okay, and that way you cut off the sort of the black market of excess THC. And I think it's possible to do that. Once you start regulating with licenses, you can control it. And once you start doing with tax, you can at least control some of it and earn some, income in the meantime. I mean, look at booze, look at liquor, alcohol, even wine, even beer. It's all subject to taxation, and that way, there's a control point, and there's also revenue. You can overdo that, though, I would say, and it's got to be done with some reasonableness.
Yeah, the revolution was in part because of the whiskey tax. It caused a revolution.
We have always had a tax on alcohol, haven't we? From revolutionary days.
Yeah. Jay, earlier on, you had mentioned the crime that's associated with the pot industry or with the industry. And I see it as, let me run this past you, is because each state, and this goes to your chaos theory, each state has passed their acceptance of marijuana, yet the feds haven't. So those pot growers and farmers and distribution centers, when they bring in the revenue, they can't take that revenue and put it in a federal bank. banks won't allow deposits if it's related to pot growing or distribution of marijuana. Therefore, everyone knows that these institutions or wherever these places are located are ripe for invasion, robbery, things of that nature, murder, actually. Wouldn't that be a benefit of the feds finally saying fine, or make an exemption that federal banks can accept deposits if it's related to pot production and distribution?
I think they are.
Are they?
I can't
I
give
don't
you
think
the
so.
detail. I read something about how Joe Biden was trying to do just that.
Oh, okay.
And and I totally agree with you that takes off the possibility of burglary, robbery, what have you, of cash that sits there. It's hard for a pot seller to protect his cash if he knows that they know that everyone knows that he's rich on cash. So I think that's a very important point. But I'd like to throw one in on you, and that's this. And I'm really not sure what the answer is. You know the gateway thing? That is always a reason to object to marijuana use. That it's a gateway for other drugs. And other drugs, whether it be opioids or cocaine or heroin or any of the hard drugs that are circulating the country. Also, let us not forget they're here too. So that the individual user develops the mindset that drugs in general are okay. And when the dealer comes to him and offers him a little something extra or a mixture of one thing and another thing, before you know it, he tries it and he's addicted to something much more serious, medically, personally, and community-wise. And so I wonder how you guys feel about that, because the gateway issue is still out there. And actually, even if we made, marijuana recreational, it would continue to be out there. You take a little of this, and now you're going to try a little of that. What do you think?
Yeah, Chuck, what do you think?
I totally don't buy it. I mean, this one
I don't either.
Well, first of all, there's no evidence or data showing that marijuana sellers are connected to opioid sellers. Second, there's no economic reason for them to do that. The watchword, the buzzword for drug industry sellers to make big profits and burgeoning markets is addiction, just as the watchword for vehicle makers and other product makers is built-in obsolescence. Those are their repeat player marketing tools. You don't get that with marijuana. I don't know anyone, and this is purely anecdotal, who has used marijuana who has become addicted to any of the other drug substances, and they're marketed and sold differently by different people.
Yeah, to a different customer base.
Yeah,
correct.
Let me pine on this. I look at cell phone usage of all areas of the demographics of age, and I find cell phone usage is highly more addictive than marijuana. To address the gateway drug notion,
how do you smoke a cell phone?
Been done before. It's called a lithium battery that goes off. It smokes. The gateway issue has been debated for decades and decades and decades. And, studies are studies. I'll quote Mark Twain, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics. And I don't think there is a direct correlation between marijuana and leading in a direction of other drugs, be it hashish, LSD, opioids, things of that nature. I never bought it either. So I agree with Chuck on that point.
What about the other aspect of this? I'll tell you a short story. If we have time, I think, for a short story. When I was in the service, there was a ship, okay, and all the sailors on the ship were taking little red pills, and this is during Vietnam time. They were getting them, ashore. They were getting the red pills ashore, and they were circulating them, and they were cheap. And everybody on the ship, all the sailors were taking red pills. And then when the Naval Investigative Service found out about that, they essentially decommissioned the ship. They took it offline. You can't have a ship like that. On the analysis that if everybody on the ship is taking little red pills, and you can apply the same analysis to smoking pot, then the ship is not a worthy institution. It is not seaworthy. It is not capable of performing its mission. They can apply that same idea to a business, to driving a car, to handling heavy machinery. Are you as capable? And I'm not saying that I'm on the right-hand conservative side of this. I'm raising the issue for you guys. Is that person, that organization, that community as productive as it would be without the little red pills or the marijuana?
Pronounced silence.
I don't know. Look at the music industry, Jay. There have been a lot of extremely highly functioning individuals, jazz, rock.
Oh, that's not the same thing, Chuck. In the music industry, you have to take little red pills, or you cannot create the music. That's got to be an exception to everything we've been talking about.
Yeah, I can see for miles and miles. Yeah, I get it.
Or certainly Mother's Little Helper. Hey, guess what?
That's right.
We got through your story, Jay, and it's as predicted, we're out of time. So let's go around the table, starting with you, Chuck, on your last thoughts on this topic.
Well, I want to honor the late Wally Bachman. He was the guy whose medical marijuana plant was stolen. He reported it to the police, and they charged him with marijuana possession. I was actually clerking for the lawyer who represented him in the case, and a very nice elder local judge asked very honestly, straightforward, what do you think I should do with it? Judge, with all the serious stuff that comes in front of you, even at the district court misdemeanor level, what do you think you should do with this? What would you do if this were your kid? He said, that's a good idea. He ordered the father of Mr. Bachman or some elder relative to come in and said, I want you to take him home and lecture him on the pros and cons of marijuana use. Otherwise, case dismissed.
Justice at hand. I like that. Thank you, Chuck. Jay, you get the final word on this controversial topic.
Well, not to repeat what I said before, but I think we're living in a kind of legal chaos on this. I think it was this Wisconsin. They're trying to make it recreationally legal. At the same time, the Fed is in there, and it was in the morning news. I think the Fed is in there, and they found like a ton of marijuana in some rubber tires that they confiscated. Same place, same jurisdiction. Two authorities, doing completely opposite things. That's chaos. So, I think as we ought to avoid chaos, we ought to try to respect the rule of law that's common not only in the United States, but elsewhere. There are different penalties in Europe from country to country, community to community, and they're confused by what they see happening here. We still are, the city on the hill. And if we adopt the rule of law, a consistency, a rationality, then I think other people will say, oh, that's good. We should do that too. Right now, our chaos is exported to other places, which is really, really not what we want.
All righty. Well, that's it for our show. Great topic and certainly a better conversation. Thank you so much, gentlemen. I'd like to thank my co-host, Jay Fidell, and our special esteemed guest, Chuck Crumpton, for an enlightening discussion. And
thank you very much.
I think you just rolled a doobie of chaos.
A joker, a toker, and a midnight smoker.
Well,
and with that,
will
join us next week.
Who has never had a toke, please sit down.
I've lost control of the show yet again, thanks to Mr. Fidell. Won't you join us next week for American Issues Take One? I'm Tim Apicella, your host. And until then, aloha.
Thank you so much for watching ThinkTech Hawaii. If you like what we do, Please like us and click the subscribe button on YouTube and the follow button on Vimeo. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and donate to us at thinktechhawaii.com. Mahalo.